This is day 1 of the February 94 7-day retreat at Springwater. Aside from last night's introductory words, this being the first talk of a retreat, let us talk about listening. What is listening? Are there different kinds of listening, different ways of listening to each other, to a talk such as this? And in that connection, let us talk about authority. It has already come up in meetings. The aversion to authority, not wanting anything imposed upon one. So let's, if possible, clear it up the very first day. This whole question of authority. And look at what is our relationship, what is real relationship. Not just between you and me, the one who talks and the one who listens, but relationship with each other. What is it? Again, are there different ways of relating? And if we have time for it, what am I here for? This question has also come up already. What am I doing here? Is there a practice? What am I supposed to do? On this beautiful Sunday morning, with sun warming the land, melting the snow, and the cawing of crows. Some windows open. We haven't had that in a long time during a regular talk or sitting. What is listening? We may have asked this question before, have heard talks and asked ourselves, or we may never have asked ourselves, how do we listen? And regardless of what happened in the past, that's the beauty of this work, we can look at it freshly. This way it will never get stale. Wondering about listening. Just the other day, someone said, we never listen to the whole thing. We never perceive everything. We select very specifically according to our conditioning, our wants and fears, what we want to, what we hear, what we perceive. So there is a filtering process in place, filtering out and letting in certain items, certain words, certain sounds. And our question here is, can we become aware of that? Can we become aware of not listening or only listening partially, or turning off the moment something sounds threatening, or wanting to hear more if something sounds inviting or flattering or enhancing? So this listening is a very vast, complex thing. Not just the words or one sound of a radiator ticking or a crow cawing, but what is the reaction here? Is there selection going on? And I don't mean that one imposes these questions as one listens, because that itself becomes selective, becomes filtering of input. But becoming aware of, not wanting to hear something or wanting more of something. Fear arising at the mention of something. And what is connected with that. Beginning to think of something else. So what is said passes by, unheard, unlooked at. Is it possible to become ever more transparent inwardly? Not just to the words, the sounds, but to one's own conditioned reactiveness. And yet not lose the thread. Not get involved with evaluating oneself. Here I am, reactive again, I shouldn't be. I wish I was more open. And in that kind of involvement, judgmental involvement of what is noticed, getting cut off from what is happening. Twittering of birds, the dripping from roof, the wind, the breathing, the being here together, and looking, listening to what is being said in an open, non-defensive, non-demanding way. Is such openness possible? Listening undefendedly and undemandingly? And at the same time interested in what is being said and examining it? Or keeping it open? Not knowing whether what is said is really right or wrong, but becoming interested in it, wondering about it, and therefore keeping new questions open that may shed light on our listening to ourselves and each other as the day proceeds. Yes, such openness of listening is possible if the resistance to it comes into awareness. Is the possibility of open listening if the resistance to it is perceived, comes into awareness. Maybe in the beginning quite dimly, darkly, vaguely. And yet there is something that doesn't want to look, to hear. And with that, the defense that all can come into awareness. That's the beauty of this work, of wondering unconditionally about what we are from moment to moment, alone and in relationship with each other. And we can't find, if there isn't some openness which involves, if you will, some risk-taking of being hurt or scared, not knowing what will come next, not knowing whether we really are what we have always imagined we are, without questioning it. But it's all right to see what we are, to hear what's going on. If it's not immediately judged as bad or good, desirable or undesirable in accordance with images we have about ourselves, that we are this, we're attentive, we're good, we're generous, we're kindly, unselfish. Or the opposite images which are also in place and defended, that we're no good, that we never get it, we're not as good as others, others always are ahead of us. Such images prevent in touchness with the moment-to-moment thinking and emoting process. The wanting and fearing process, which is moving all the time. Not just within an organism, but between each other. Evaluating, wanting, fearing, resisting, approaching, according to expectation, which is imagined things to happen. This is going on all the time. And this is the first thing that may reveal itself in a silent retreat, which one has expected, according to idea, to be so peaceful. So could we, together at this moment, look at our expectations, all the things we wanted to get from this retreat, and put it into question, put it up for questioning. And meaning leaving open what this really is from moment to moment, so that it can be plumbed, felt, experienced, lived with, or lived through, without disappointment or all the reactions that come from our set up expectations. Rather be surprised by something than to expect, and constantly be disappointed, feel out of place, or whatever all the reactions to our expectations may be. So, what is it like to, at this moment, listen freely, openly, without any expectation? Not the expectation of getting it or not getting it. Without the expectation of getting something, which means, is it there? Is the expectation there of getting something? Some people have already mentioned it. I want to get something out of this retreat, but I don't know what. So, can awareness of expectation include the dripping, the ticking of the radiator, the gentle sound of wind and crows, the breathing this instant? Can there be listening to breathing this instant? Not knowing, oh, this is my breath, I know it, why listen to it? It's nothing knowable, but it's something that happens every, I don't know what the time lapses are. Ever so often, in 1 minute, there's breathing. Can it be felt, listened to, happen without knowing it? And therefore, a new openness that is not putting filters on what is perceived. Because there's nothing to be known, but there's everything to be lived. Because in this undefended, unresisted openness, there is no separation between wind and drips and people and what's sitting here. It is one ongoing whatever. Without needing defense or attack. So in listening to a talk, can we put expectations aside? For the first time, I have a vague idea that we'll talk about listening and authority and relationship. But I have no expectation of what I say. It happens. Talks happen. So can we all put expectations aside, at least at the moment that they are noticed, and realize that they have little or nothing to do with this moment of being? Expectations have nothing to do with this moment of winding and dripping and breathing. And maybe thoughts and images arising and being seen. There's nothing that needs to be expected. It happens every instant. But the pattern of expecting is deeply wired, deposited into this body-mind with its elaborate memories and interconnections of memories with feelings, sensations, and emotions. So just because for a moment there was no expectation and therefore everything there in all simplicity does not mean that the work is done. The next moment there may be the expectation for this moment to continue, to have more of it, or the expectation that for me it'll blow again. So it's a moment-to-moment discovery of the patterns without needing to do anything about it. The awareness of this moment is sufficient to reveal what is there. So, again, freshly listening this instant. Is there resistance? Is there expectation? Is there wanting something, wanting to get something? Or afraid of not getting something? That's all there with the wind and the breath. And it has room in this vastness of space, which is this moment of no time, no division. Thoughts may arise, am I doing it right? Or how am I to do this? Just hear them like a tape running, without needing to do anything about the tapes running. It's all there. And awareness is there when there's not caught upness in the net of ideas and habits. But even that caught upness can be instantly experienceable, visible, perceivable, instantly, as if by magic. Because it is possible and does happen to human beings, ordinary like you and me, to wake up to what's actually there. Without needing a doer. if there's going to sleep again with dreams and fantasies and trains of thought about someplace else or someone else or being somewhere else. You can be waking up again that there was a train of thought about being someplace else. And not to expect spectacular things to be there in its stead. That's so often our expectation. Well, if there is a moment of waking up, the thought is a memory now, just thinking about another place or another person. At this moment there is just wind and breathing and warmth, sunshine and light. Caw, caw. And then the thought may come, well, is that all? Is that what waking up or being aware means? That's not very much. And that thought has already shrunk the openness of space to our habitual chamber of reacting and wanting and fearing and expecting and judging. There's a very narrow space in which we normally live, alone and with each other, very narrow, very confining, often almost predictable, how he will react if I say that and how I will react if she says that. The narrowness of predictable reactions is what we live in normally. So, what is unpredictable here-ness, now-ness, beingness? And not want it to be something or expect it to be something, because then there's not now-ness, then it's living in the narrow space again of expectation and the videos from the past and the future. Does the mind want to comment on what is heard and felt and seen and experienced? That's its habit. But the comments of the mind, describing to ourselves what is happening, naming it, imaging it, imaging a crow, or how do you image wind? Well, you can image the trees moving, weeds blowing, water rippling. That's all happening now and can be seen. Images can be seen. But the blowing of the wind and the crowing and the breathing are what they are. The images are not what the crowing is. The idea, the words, the descriptions that I give in here, because this talk is, at least seems to be mostly words, the words themselves are not the breathing, the directness of it, the immediacy of a cough. That's not a word, it's what it is. The actuality of this instant, what is it? Without words, the words may point toward it, but the words are not this instant of crowing and breathing and coughing and heart beating, winding, lighting. It's not the word. We use words, but it's not the real thing. But seeing a word arise or heard as a word as real. But it must not be confused with the reality of what it's pointing toward, the reality of breathing. This instant of and the blowing. So hard. It's so hard, isn't it, to catch a hold of it. It will not even be caught, because then there's me and wanting that, and the gap has been created between me and what I want to get and hear and capture. It happens on its own that this instant is not the word or the description. It's very significant to see the difference between thinking and imagining and ka, 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 ka. But it's not a task given and a test one has to, pass. We're talking about it. We're working with this whole thing. Wondering about it, drawing attention to it, and then let it run its own way, which it does amazingly. So coming to the question of authority, I've been talking for maybe half an hour. Does one feel authorized by the talk? Meaning, I have to believe, I have to accept what has been said. It's been imposed upon me. Does one feel that way? It's such a constant question and problem that we need to bring it up. We just had a retreat in which I was a participant. I didn't give talks. We did have once a day a group meeting in which everybody could talk, so I talked also. And often the comment by some people will be, it's good to have a retreat without any authority. Or sometimes people say, if we come to talks, will we become dependent upon your authority? I'd like to know what is referred to. What do we mean when we say that? It's good to keep this dialogue open, because there may be something in the way I talk or what I say or how I say it that falls into the authoritarian slot of this conditioned body-mind that all of us manifest. It's not the intention, it's not in the least the intention to become an authority for anyone. And what we're talking about or looking at is not of that nature. It is what is happening and going on with you and me. And to grasp it, to see it, to hear it and experience it out of the aliveness of this moment, not according to what an authority says about it. And yet, to give a talk, words have to be used. And energy carries these words. And that energy of talking may be confused with the energy of imposing or being imposed upon, which is not the intention of it. I'm not directing myself to be this way or that way. It's something that's happening out of looking and being here together with open windows and wind and sun. And 36 people breathing. Or more, or fewer, I don't know, I've lost track. So can one become aware, or at least wonder whether there is an authority creating process going on in this mind all the time, making others into authorities because there is wanting of authority, wanting someone else to tell me what's true, what's right, what I should do, what I'm here for. Because it seems easier since our childhood days to be told what to do, what the world is like, what I am, what everybody is, and to believe it, to sort of hum along with it, rather than to stop in one's tracks and allow the energy to find out now what is actually going on, which means really energy gathering, not just going here and there and following and believing, but loosened from that, from those tracks, and freely gathering here to find out this moment, what is happening, not according to any authority. What has been mentioned in this talk are improvisations at saying something that is happening, expectation arising. But don't believe it. Don't accept it. I'm not an authority. I'm just talking from what is watched, observed here. And maybe it can also be watched and observed elsewhere. Maybe you say, there's no expectation here right now. And if that is so, then we're together in being with what is actually true this moment. Expectation or no expectation. Wanting or no wanting. And maybe due to differences in auditory capacity, you may hear the wind different from the way I hear it. It doesn't matter. I don't want you to hear the wind like I hear it. It's there, but if you're hard of hearing or deaf, you won't hear it. But it doesn't mean the mind can't be open. Listening without any objects. Meaning open. Not expecting, but being with what's there. Whether the senses make contact with it or not. So, examining each one for ourselves, do we want authority? To trace that, to track it. We do. It's programmed into us. To feel safer, more secure, more at ease, more childlike, with the illusion of protection by the parents. What parents can protect their children these days? Really, truly. Of course they can be loving and enveloping and providing. A few considered of the multitude of parents, so many cannot. But at least the ideal is floating around in many people's minds. Getting security from a parent, a guiding hand, an omniscient being, omnipotent and omniscient, to be in that person's ambience. But this is not the point of what we're doing here. The essence of it is to awake oneself to what's true and actual and real this moment, not according to what someone else said. It may jive. We see the same thing at the same moment, The desire to be told, to be protected is there, isn't it? In organisms, human beings, animals. Deeply programmed probably into the most primitive parts of the brain. Wanting protection. Wanting to follow. Wanting a leader who knows, who's strong, almighty. I remember when this illusion broke down for me. I had such kind of an image of my father. Not that he was particularly a person who was sort of demonstrative of his strength. But I thought he knew everything and could protect me. He seemed to know everything. And was very caring, even though he was not around too much. He worked long hours and wrote books and publications. He was always behind his desk. But if I came to him, he would put his pen down and turn sideways from his chair and enter in on what I wanted to talk with him about or say. And then once during an air raid, or during many air raids, but this picture is still present, it must be from one particular, my father sitting huddled in a grey coat with his hat. It was cold, the heat was gone. And something had been destroyed. There was dust coming into the basement where we were sitting. And he had no eyes for anybody. He was just huddled there. And I realized he can't protect me. No one here can protect me. So, can we begin to stand on our own 2 feet? Open eyes and ears and just wonder what's there, inside and outside. Coming to talks if one feels like it, because they may be helpful in whatever way, but they're always pointing back to me and you, ourselves. Not as separate entities, but as a place where waking up can happen to what's true and real for all of us. An awareness which is undivided, indivisible, impossible to divide awareness. It's either there or it isn't there. When it's there, it includes everyone and everything, without any sense of time, or gain or loss. And no one, and maybe that's the beauty of it, no one can give it to us, and therefore make us dependent on him or her. It's not bestowable. It's experienceable, alone or together. So to come to our last question, it's gotten quite late. What is our relationship with each other? Right now, what is our relationship? Dependency, wanting of each other, or listening together to the sound of wind and crows and breathing? Actually there, not created by thought or imagination. In that we're all actually or potentially together, aren't we? There's no authority in that. It's not even knowable, but it's there before it's known. What's our relationship with each other? Here, right now. One may feel distant or separated. Does one? If that feeling of separateness and isolation is not there because the thoughts about that are quiet in listening now, then what's there? What is there here between us? There's nothing between us, is there? When there's nothing between us, then there's love. Not romantic love or sentimental love, but there's no distance between us, feeling. It's not even a feeling, it is so. A moment of aliveness without this habitual encapsulation into me ideas. A moment of freedom from that is a moment of love. Love in the wholeness of everything. That wholeness is love. We will end here for today.